So far, we've got a list of tchotchkes that we can then act on by either buying an individual tchotchke or deleting the tchotchke entry. And we've got our form that if we create a new tchotchke, it will cause us to reload because of our nice little observable we have in our service. Right, so in all these cases, we've got this nice little set of features here, all available to us. But maybe we want to implement some sort of type ahead searching. In that case, we would put a form maybe on our list here. And when we put the form on the list, we'd probably have to make another call to search as opposed to getting the complete list. So let's implement that particular strategy. So we'll start off by creating a method in the tchotchke service. And that tchotchke service is now going to have a get tchotchkes by search term. There we go. So this is get tchotchkes by search term. You'll notice now that we're going to do a term being passed into the service. We will then call HTTP client.get of tchotchke array. And that API tchotchkes API also takes an optional parameter, query search parameter question mark, search term of a value. And if the service sees the search term, it goes and searches the content that it has on the server and returns back what we're looking for. So then we have a nice little network search service. On the component side, we have to do the same thing. We have to give ourselves a method to call when this happens. So let's kind of put that for now in parallel with the other methods and look at it. And it's going to be very similar to the one above. See, we have our get tchotchkes by search term, and we give it a predicate, a term. We then call the service subscribe and replace our state. But obviously we need a place to actually input this stuff. So if we go to our template, the form is going to be a HTML form with an input for search term. Now, I know earlier we used the reactive forms. I'm just going to use the really simple NgModel standard forms. And I've set up the module for this list to take the forms module, which is not the reactive forms module. If you like the reactive forms, feel free to make this a reactive form as well. The reason I did that is I wanted to show you the difference here, because when you deal with binding a search term field like this to a form element, the only way you get the observable out of it is by using the form module and the banana in a box binding. They call it banana in a box because it's a parentheses, which is like a banana, and the square brackets, which is a box, which means basically bind a two-way binding of a variable called search term in the component to the input field that you're attaching it to. Now we're going to do that, and we're also going to give access to this object in the component using something called a ViewChild. And that's what we're going to bind to. We're going to watch the observable of the value changes in the ViewChild. So just imagine that we're creating a variable called filter input, and this little extra syntax is required in order for us to get the actual object of the control with its observables for its state and content changes called value changes as observable properties. So that is a template variable, filter input, prefixed by a pound. The way to get that is to use the ViewChild annotation, and that's imported from, if we go up to the top here, that's imported ViewChild from Angular core. And we're saying look up the variable filter input in the template, assigned to the property filter input in the component, which is now a variable in the state, and use the data type of NgModel. The reason we tell it to bind the data type here is so we don't get a generic HTML input. We get the actual narrowed down TypeScript variable type for NgModel. And that gives us something we can work with. All right, so again, the filter input variable in the template binds to the filter input search term in ViewChild. That is stored in a variable called filter input, and it's of type NgModel. Then in our ng on init, we can come in and do this dot filter input, and look at this, dot value changes. There's the observable. We're going to pipe that through a series of steps, and what we're going to do is we're not going to search every single time someone types keys. If someone's an 80 word per minute typer, they're going to have potentially dozens and dozens of calls being kicked off. So we want to kind of back off a little bit. And there are operators for RxJS called debounce time. We're going to make that 500 milliseconds. And another operator called distinct until changed. So that means only every 500 milliseconds check to see if it's changed. If it's changed, produce an output from value changes. And I've imported these already. You'll see the imports. We have some other ones for later in the class. But we have import debounce time distinct until change from RxJS operators. These are operators that can be piped to from an observable. And the observable that we're pulling it from is value changes. And that is every change that changes the value in the input field. And now that we have that, we can subscribe to it. And our subscription, we can say, here comes the search term. If we have a search term, if it's truthy, then we'll get the tchotchkes by search term. Else, we'll do get all tchotchkes. And I can type guinea pig. We're searching just the title here. And if we go back, we only get the things that show up. Now, if we delete, we reload the whole thing. So we have to kind of start all over again for our searching. So what we'll do is we'll come back over to this refresh needed, and we're going to add an operation. And tap does side effects in the object that's subscribing, things that would happen that have nothing to do with the actual observables. And actually, I can just purely say, since it's not anything that has more than one statement, I can say this dot filter input dot get the control dot reset and make it reset to null. Go back to our playground, and sure, here's our search. And if I decide to create something, it will clear out the input filter. It'll all be gone.
I hope you find these useful. And if you're looking for on-site training, advice, mentoring, or technical help with any area of your full stack development efforts, head over to chariotsolutions.com to check out our services. Thank you.